How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
To give you some idea.
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the dystopia. This is the final time. What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in dystopia. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in dystopia. This is the final
What up, everyone? Happy Wednesday. We're going live a little bit late today because we are watching a live panel. Now, if you missed yesterday's stream, yesterday we watched a panel that occurred last week from the Transgender Law Center, and it was everything I hoped it would be. It was queer activism. They said their number one enemy was capitalism, like 5,000 ways from Sunday. They said capitalism over and over and over and over and over again. I thought they were going to talk about Gnosticism because it was a queer activism panel, and James Lindsay tells us all the time that queer is really Gnosticism and that they're all Gnostics. But no, there was no talk of Gnosticism at all, as it turns out, because queer theory is not Gnostic. Anyone who thinks it is wrong. They have listened to horrible advisors. James Lindsay has propagated a massive lie. And you know, one of the reasons I bring James up is James seems to think it's against YouTube's terms of service for me to watch other people's live streams, even though it's not. Because when we watch someone else's live stream, we don't spam, we're not disruptive, we don't cause problems, we might ask questions, but those questions are always going to be appropriate for the content. We are not going to spam them or cause chaos and nonsense. And I want to emphasize that we don't do that. And if anyone disrespects my wishes in this regard, they're going to find themselves banned on my channel, which I know you guys don't want. So, James, I'm sure that James is going to come to the defense of the Transgender Law Center as we are watching this stream today. Because, you know, James obviously is on their side. James obviously should stick up for people who are being harassed on the internet by people watching their content and asking questions. We'll see if he does that. We'll see if James Lindsay follows the principles he pretends to have, or if it's just all a sham and a fraud. Because today we are tuning into a live panel that the Transgender Law Center is doing, and they're going to be complaining about Trump's executive orders for a little while. The panel gets started in about 4 minutes. There'll probably be a little bit of like a warm-up period before they actually get into it. So we probably have a little bit more than that. But we are going to be watching this live, guys. I do have the link pinned to the top of the chat over on YouTube. I don't have it pinned to the top of the chat on Rumble, but you guys can come to YouTube and find it if you really want to. We will have the chat displayed live on the stream. And so we can see what happens and all that good stuff. And we're going to be counting down to that. Now, before we get into that, guys, I just want to remind people, if you have not yet picked up my newest book, A Brief History of Racism, it is available now in paperback and on Kindle over on Amazon. You can, if you've read the book and you like the book, please make sure you leave it a review. 5 stars only. If you've got anything less than 5 stars, keep it to yourself. But luckily, many of you have been leaving 5-star reviews, and so I really do appreciate that. I do just want to remind people that the reviews really do help out, and I'm committed to only doing real reviews from real people, because most of the reviews that you guys see on books are like nonsense and all that. They're not even by people who read the book. And so you guys can really help me out by leaving it a review. And I do hope you enjoy the book. I enjoyed writing it an awful lot. It talks about the creation and the evolution of the term racism, and I think it's really relevant to what's going on in the world today. I'm also currently working on debunking the Communist Manifesto, or I shouldn't say I'm working on it. It's actually done, and it will be going out to members of the Red Menace Collective either tonight or tomorrow. I am still fighting with Amazon to get them to actually list the paperback book. They're fine with listing the Kindle version, but they keep going, this has content that has previously been published. And I'm like, I know it has the Communist Manifesto in it, but the Communist Manifesto is in the public domain. And Amazon is like, you have to provide us proof that you have permission to use the Communist Manifesto. And I'm like, well, it's in the public domain, so no, I don't actually. And then Amazon was like, you have to make sure you list Karl Marx as an author. And so now Karl Marx is also an author of my book, because Amazon told me I had to. And I was like, all right, fine, but can we just get the pre-order up? And then so I did everything Amazon wanted me to do, and then Amazon came back and said, you are trying to publish content that's previously been published. And I was like, we're really doing another round of this, Amazon. Really, we're doing another round of this. So we have made some progress on the Amazon front. We're not quite there yet, but the book is scheduled to release next week on March. I think it's next week, right? Is that next week? Yeah, March 14th. So we got about 9 days for Amazon to get its shit together. I think that's plenty of time. March 14th, the reason I selected that date as the release date is that it is the anniversary of Karl Marx's death. So I can't imagine a better way to celebrate than releasing a 400-page book. I don't know why it says it's 500. It's not 500 pages. It's 400 pages. That actually is a problem. I don't know what's going on with that either. Why is Amazon saying it's 500 pages, not 500 pages, 400 pages? Another thing I need to troubleshoot with Amazon. Thank you for that. But it will be released next week, whether Amazon likes it or not. We're gonna power through this. It's gonna happen. Anyway, make sure you can pre-order the copy of the Kindle edition now. And if you guys want the advanced digital copy, which will be going out either tonight or tomorrow to the Red Menace Collective, then make sure you head over to redmenacecollective.substack.com, sign up as a member, and this is $10 a month, $100 a year. The Red Menace Collective are people who basically allow me to write books. You guys fund my books, and in return, I give you draft chapters of the books before they're published, so you get to read them before anyone else. You also get a free digital copy of the book when it's released, which is why you will be getting a PDF of Debunking the Communist Manifesto either today or tomorrow whenever I get it up. Because the book is done, we're now just waiting for Amazon to do its job. If you do want a paperback version of the book, you will have to order it when it is out. And no, we're not doing Queer Rope tonight. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow. Maybe we'll have a Friday. Maybe we'll have an all-day-long Friday special, Trendlin. Okay, we're not doing it tonight, though. We're doing Transgender Law Center tonight. Have they started the stream yet? No, they should be starting any second. So yeah, I also want to remind people, what else do I have? Oh, not that. I have started my next book, which is going to be, it's called Be Gay, Do Crime, the story of the Mary Nardini gang. I'm already working on the second chapter of this. You can read the first chapter now over on the Red Menace Collective or on my regular Substack. I put it on both. And honestly, I'm having a really good time writing this book. It's very interesting. I'm going into the evolution of militant queer politics to tell a very specific story about a group that is highly influential of today's queer activists called the Mary Nardini gang that most people have never heard of before. And if you want to read the first chapter, it is available now. And it's a freebie. I gave it away because I was so proud of it and I love the way it came out. But all future chapters will only be for members of the Red Menace Collective, and it really is kind of like a fascinating story, and it tells us a lot about the world today. And this is just like, I'm banging books out, guys. I got a whole schedule of books I want to write this year, and you know, we're just gonna get it done because no one else is doing it, so I'll do it. Fine. And if you want to see the books as I'm writing them, literally before they become books, head over to redmenacecollective.substack.com, sign up as a member. You can also find it via, do you guys know the Red Menace Collective actually does have a landing page too? I do want to do something with this at some point, but we do actually have a whole Red Menace Collective website that I think looks pretty rad. You can find your Red Menace Collective merch on that site, which I'm actually wearing this one right now. I am wearing currently, I know you guys can't see it, the Are You an Anti-Communist t-shirt, which you can get in the Unwoke Art store. And it's rad, and I love it. And I think it's great. It's got a giant-ass QR code on the back that goes to the website, which I think is cool, and it just looks cool, and I love it. So head over to redmenacecollective.com if you want to find that, or you can go to the Unwoke Art store, whichever. You can also get stickers, stuff like that. We got lots of good stuff. All right, have they started yet? Guys, please make sure you are mounting the like button if you would be so kind. Please make sure you are subscribing to the channel if you are not already subscribed. And Trendlin, I just did a whole rant about I'm still arguing with Amazon over this, Trendlin. It's not my fault. It is not my fault that Amazon is making this more difficult than it needs to be. I will tell you when the paperback is up. If it had been my way, the paperback would have been up the other day when I originally submitted it, but Amazon keeps giving me this bullshit of, you're trying to publish content that's previously been published. I'm like, I know, it's the Communist Manifesto, assholes. I know. There are 100 different versions of the Communist Manifesto on your website. Anyway, shh. Okay, we're getting started.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to the second of our community conversations here at Transgender Law Center. Last week, we heard from powerful leaders on what Black power and resistance look like right now. And today we're going to hear from experts in the field about the executive actions pouring out of the White House and what they mean for our communities. I'll let each of them introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, leave comments or questions in the chat.
Oh, we will.
And we'll see if we can get to some of them towards the end of our conversation today.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do that.
My name is Heron Greensmith.
Oh,
I'm the Deputy Director of Policy here at the Transgender Law Center.
That's Heron?
Let's jump right in and hear from our guests today.
What the fuck
Marie
happened
Jensen
to Heron?
From Transformations.
That was not the
Erin
Heron I
Mann
met 2 years
from
ago.
The LGBTQ Center in San Diego, and Elizabeth Gill from ACLU. Marie, you want to go first, please? Then Erin, and then Elizabeth.
Wow, Heron!
Sure. Thank you so much, TLC and Heron, for having me. Heron and I just got to know each other a bit more and be with each other actually in Northwest Arkansas
2 years ago when I originally met them.
So my name is Marie Jensen, she, her pronouns. I'm the president and founding executive director of Transformations, which is a trans women of color led organization. And we serve 3 states, Missouri, Kansas, and Northwest Arkansas. So the Ozark Mountain region. And as you can imagine, it is a very busy time for us with all of the anti-trans legislation happening in these very, very red states. And so one of the things that we just did was create a trans town hall.
Oh, shit.
The local news stations, believe it or not, the media coverage was actually really positive and affirming. Maybe not the comments, but the coverage was. And we are actually being requested to do it for now Central Arkansas. So we're in conversation to do that in April. But right now it's the thick of the anti-trans legislative season, and we do a lot of different programs, including running a camp for trans leaders of color called Liberation Camp in the Ozarks every fall, a national virtual summit for trans women of color in leadership, mentorship, and advocacy called The Dolls Are Thriving, as well as doing mutual aid and community responsive work.
Hi folks, my name is Aaron Nung. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them, and I am the Civic and Community Engagement Specialist at the San Diego LGBT Community Center. I'll talk a little bit about what the center does, but I'll really get into it when we get to my little piece of today's conversation. But the short of it is that the San Diego LGBT Community Center has been around for more than 50 years. We are the largest health and human services organization for LGBTQ plus folks in all of San Diego County. And so we are both a services provider as well as an advocacy organization, which really puts us in a unique spot, especially with our close proximity to the US-Mexico border. So thank you so much for having us today, and I'm excited to get into today's conversation.
Hi folks, Elizabeth Gill. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior counsel with ACLU's LGBTQ and HIV project. And folks may know the ACLU is a large civil rights, civil liberties organization. We've been around for over 100 years. And a thing that we are doing a lot of in this time is suing over these unconstitutional orders that are coming out of the White House.
Thank you so much, all. This is going to be such a rich conversation, so let's dive right into the first question, which is actually for me. What are executive actions? What the heck is a regulation? What is a comment period? Is Trump passing laws without Congress? I'm going to take moderator's privilege and share a little bit about the regulatory process first with folks. As everyone knows, there are 3 branches of government.
I can't get over how different
the legislative branch or Congress
it's so crazy.
Who pass laws,
completely
the executive
different
branch
from when I
or
met
the president
them.
Who signs laws and directs agencies
Which was when I was
to make
undercover
rules
and
regulations that enact the laws, and then the judiciary branch or the federal courts who interpret the law when there's confusion or contradiction. Executive actions are actions by the president that direct their agencies, like the Department of Education or the Department of Health and Human Services, to make rules that administer the laws passed by Congress. Lately, the president has been issuing a lot of executive actions impacting immigrants, Black people and other people of color, and transgender and non-binary people, to name only a few of the impacted populations. These actions are directing Trump's agencies to make rules threatening providers of health care for trans kids, threatening sanctuary states.
Can someone ask, can you tell us specifically how the executive orders impact trans people?
Threatening people who want to support and provide programs and services to migrants. Lately, the agencies have started to issue their proposed rules through a process called notice and comment, through which agencies share draft rules with the public and ask for comments on how the public feels. So depending on the proposed rules, the public might have 30 or 60 or 90 days to share our comments with the agencies in the hope that our comments will form the final rules. In February, the Department of State issued its draft rules for the passport gender marker change.
Ooh.
The rules that will prevent trans folks from updating our gender markers on federal documents and prevent people from accessing an X marker. Now, if you would like to comment on these proposed rules, there are 2 fairly easy ways. The first of which is much easier. The ACLU itself has a comment portal you can find on its website to issue comments directly to the Department of State. And you can always submit comments directly through a government website called regulations.gov. Now, the executive action directing the Department of State to issue these rules is already being litigated, and that brings me to our first guest. Elizabeth, the ACLU is involved in some litigation or lawsuits around a few of the presidential actions, including the passport rules. Can you tell us a little bit about those, please?
Yes, I'm happy to. I'll just say one thing, which is if you are going to comment for a federal rulemaking, it's helpful with a hostile administration like this one if you go through an organization like the ACLU so that we can keep track of how many people are commenting. That's just a useful figure for us to have and not necessarily something that the administration will talk about otherwise. there are already lawsuits in place. So the president, as Heron said, the executive orders really can only be directives to the agencies. However, they are tone setting for what's going to happen. And they use very broad and hostile language, especially around immigrants and trans folks. But certainly there's, things that impact Black folks as well. And just, all of the work that this country has done on, having more inclusive spaces in education generally. So it's not just, but I'll focus for this conversation on the anti-trans executive orders that are coming out. And so, as Heron mentioned, the State Department, the Trump administration issued an executive order, and the way the executive orders are named are inherently propaganda, essentially. And so, one of his first day orders was purporting to define sex in a way for every federal law, in a way that erases the existence of trans and intersex folks. And so that executive order is entitled, gender ideology, a term that is not a legal term and is something that, right-wing folks often throw around. And that came out right away.
You literally are talking
and
for
then
the Transgender
the president
Law
has
Center
issued a set of
you're telling us gender
additional
is an
executive
ideology.
orders that reference that one. So embedding in a number of other actions the idea that there are only two sexes, that you are not only the sex that you're assigned at birth, although presumably this is how that's practically going to function, but that you are the sex of your embryo. So it's not a particularly coherent executive order. It's not tethered to science. It is clearly meant to scare people and just invite open discrimination against trans folks. And so the litigation has unfolded not necessarily against that executive order itself, but in the ways that it's being implemented harmfully. So a key area with that, the State Department, even before engaging in notice and comment rulemaking, went ahead and stopped the practice of updating people's passports with the appropriate gender marker. So the ACLU filed a lawsuit on that. And currently that lawsuit is on behalf of a set of individuals. It will likely expand to more individuals in a form that's called a class action. What that means, and so we went to court, and the court enjoined the State Department from enforcing its new policy of rejecting gender marker changes. And what that means is right now that the injunction is limited, but it is a statement by a court that the implementation of this executive order in this way is unlawful. I think there's a lot of talk about whether this Trump administration, because these executive orders are so unlawful to begin with, whether they will listen to the courts. But for now, we are hoping that they do. It will be a different level of problem if they don't. And that's what litigation can accomplish. And so in addition to the passports case, there is a case, we in Lambda Legal have a case, and a lot of these cases are brought by a set of LGBTQ legal advocacy orgs for the anti-trans executive orders. There are a number of other cases about the anti-immigration executive orders, and additional cases around the spectrum about the firing of federal employees and other actions of this administration that have largely been performed to date via executive order. The other cases that are out there in the world, and the cases have been succeeding thus far with respect to the anti-trans executive orders in stopping them from taking their threatened action. So one of the most problematic ones that came out is an executive order stating that any entity that provides gender affirming care to young people under the age of 19 will lose their federal funding.
Good.
The president doesn't have the authority to do that. The funding is apportioned through Congress, and
We're so
the
happy to see
president
you,
doesn't
Heron.
have the authority to unilaterally say, I'm going to withhold funding. There are steps that he can take via the Health and Human Services Agency, but the executive order in and of itself doesn't have that power. However,
can someone
that is a
please
significant
ask,
threat. Hospitals in the United States
can someone please ask how this is going to impact schools?
funding because of Medicare and Medi-Cal. And so
Public
a number of
schools,
hospitals around the
specifically?
country went ahead and shut down care. And so it's important to get into court to reassure folks that this is not something that they have to comply with instantaneously. So we have a lawsuit with Lambda Legal. We have an
Oh,
injunction on the federal funding piece that is nationwide. The state of Washington and a number of other states also sued and got a similar injunction. So, from a ground perspective, hospitals shouldn't be shutting down care. They can rely for the time being on the fact that that policy, even though the president, no funding had been removed from hospitals yet, but the courts have said the president doesn't have the authority to do this. This is unconstitutional. Additional areas where there will be litigation, there is litigation or will be litigation with respect to the anti-trans actions of this administration are in the prisons context. There are several cases where folks were told that their housing would be changed. We have, heard stories working with TLC about healthcare being cut off for people. Obviously, that's an emergency context, and there are several cases in that arena, and there will be more. There is a case about the exclusion of trans folks from sports, a separate EO out of this administration, and as folks may have seen, this governor of Maine got into a confrontation with President Trump over that issue last week, and it's possible that that the state of Maine will sue. Then there's also a case about federal grants and those being limited if they pertain to, again, gender ideology in any way, which is an inherently vague mandate. I mean, what does it mean to promote gender ideology? So does it mean that you exist as a queer person? So there's Lambda Legal has a lawsuit about that.
What does gender
and they
even
are also
mean,
seeking
guys?
preliminary relief, which
what does gender
we
even
hope they
mean?
get. So that's the sort of landscape. I think, there are executive orders that have gone out about schools and about what can be taught in schools, what books can be in schools, what is the treatment of trans kids in schools. And there isn't litigation currently directly challenging those executive orders, but as folks implement them in harmful ways, which unfortunately they will presumably do, there will be litigation around that.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I heard a lot in what you were saying that the president is attempting to do things, is trying to do things. And luckily we have organizations like ACLU and TLC who are standing up and using the law to fight back. I was wondering if you could share a tiny little bit more about what it means when what it means very broadly when a president attempts to do something and whether these actions are legal actions or not. We hear a lot of questions about whether or not the president is allowed to do these things. It seems like he's passing laws when he's issuing these actions. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So the short answer is that the president can direct agencies to take action, but it has to be lawful action. And so these executive orders go beyond the scope of what our laws permit. And so there will have to be, there's an inherent unlawfulness to the scope of much of what the president is asking for, even in like in the anti-trans space in particular, that requiring discrimination against transgender people we do not think is lawful, right? Like we litigate cases
what executive
against all
order
kinds of entities
requires
for that
against trans
discrimination,
people?
saying that it's
Can someone ask
unconstitutional
that?
to discriminate against trans people. So the Constitution is the base rule of law in the
What
country,
executive order
and the
requires
president can't violate the
discrimination?
Constitution. And it will be up to the courts to decide what the Constitution means. There are also constitutional provisions that provide for the separation of powers of the different branches of government, and Congress apportions the funds. And so many of these funding streams that the president is invoking in his threats, like, for example, much of school funding comes from Title I, which is a civil rights law that passed to support schools, but it has specific purposes. It's allocated, that money is allocated for in specific ways. And so the president doesn't have the authority to threaten to take, he doesn't own all the federal money, right? Congress actually does that. And there are parameters that they have historically set in a whole body of law on how the money needs to be spent. And the president just doesn't have discretion to cut it off. So part of these lawsuits is also arguing that there's an inherent separation of powers problem in many of the president's actions here.
Thank you so much. I know we're all hungry to hear, and I'm already seeing comments on YouTube about how the executive actions are impacting folks on the ground. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
You're not seeing those comments,
Marie,
Aaron.
would you
You're
be
such a
willing to
fucking
talk
liar.
about
You
to
literally
us
are not
about what's
seeing
going
those
on the
comments.
ground in Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas?
Aaron, inventing
Like you
things that
said,
aren't
I was
real.
just out there for a town hall, and I heard folks with one voice say that they were hungry for community, hungry to connect with one another, and hungry to know, like I said, how these executive actions are impacting folks on the ground.
No, I want to know how they're impacting trans people specifically.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, thank you so much again, Aaron, for coming out. It was a great town hall. And as Aaron's sharing, we had a trans town hall that happened in Northwest Arkansas, which is part of the region that Transformations, the organization that I run, serves. We also serve the full state of Missouri and Kansas. And our organization was founded and based in Kansas City. But since really the pandemic, we have been covering really these three states and primarily building our power building core and our mobilization bases out of Kansas City, St. Louis, and Eureka Springs, Arkansas. So, you know, right now, I think that trans folks are really nervous and scared. I mean, I think that that is the general consensus, especially in red states. And I say that because I have a little bit of context and concept of what it does look like differently. When I was offered this job, I had actually left Kansas City and was doing van life for a little bit, and you know, hustling and putting myself, you know, supporting myself however I could. And I ended up in Seattle and actually was getting settled there. And when I was getting settled in Seattle, I got the call to be the executive director for Transformations, even though I founded the organization back in 2016, because they had raised enough money finally to be able to afford to pay for kind of a humble ED salary. And so for the entire time of being in the role of this, I've been building out the work, being both living in a place that is heavily protected and safe for trans folks, and then serving a region that I grew up in and that I have all of my relationships in that is completely under attack constantly. If folks don't know, Missouri specifically has one of the worst anti-trans series of legislation outside of Texas in this country. And that is just one of the three states that we serve. So, I mean, one of the things that we know is that there is a narrative, I would say, that exists right now that trans people should sort of be prepared or move or mobilize or do what I call the great trans migration to the Pacific Northwest to get their resources and to stay safe. And while that is available and is an option for some, it is not a reality for most trans folks in our region. And I think that there are some narratives out there that I think have been used to fuel and harm trans folks that are used by this administration that certainly are the mythologies within the executive orders. And what I mean by that is that, you know, trans kids are having surgeries, that trans people are all on gender affirming care and just had this like great experience. Then all of a sudden, now it's being taken away from us. When the reality in the region that in Missouri, Kansas, and Arkansas is that actually most trans folks don't even have medical providers that are culturally competent still to provide care for us. So before these executive orders even existed, we saw that if a trans person was going to maybe their local free clinic, 75% of the times or more, those experiences were actually really harmful. Those experiences were actually transphobic, especially for trans kids without affirming parents, without what I call sort of the helicopter parents, right? Who are like making sure their child is safe in every way possible. We know for trans girls, we know for trans kids in survival mode, we know for trans women of color, that in particular, the experiences of getting care for undocumented folks, for folks that are immigrants and trans, right? These experiences getting care already was really horrific. And so now the executive orders have only further harmed a community that was so vulnerable and not even receiving the basic needs that they deserve, to pull those away. And I want to be clear that these executive orders aren't actually about they're actually not about trans people in a lot of ways. I mean, trans folks are, of course, being used as the tool, right? And we've seen that over and over. But these executive orders are actually about hurting all of you, right? Every American family, right? We've already seen that Trump has clearly shown his interest is in buddying, and being, I gotta be appropriate because this is I can't say what I think, but his interest is in being, the best bro friend possible to the other billionaires. And it's about keeping billionaires pocketed, about keeping himself pocketed. It's actually not about the average American family that has no trans people in it, right? These folks are still being harmed as well. We see that in Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, community states that heavily rely on Medicaid, that heavily rely on a lot of, accessible services and care, that what's happening with these executive orders are impacting everyone, are impacting communities and American families that are the most impacted and marginalized. And so I want to say that, for us at Transformations and for the work we're seeing with trans communities, we've always been at the forefront of gender affirming care. We're not going to need, let's keep it 100. We won't need a hospital or a clinic or some white cis doctor in the mix or not in order for us to be ourselves. Because long before that came in, long before WPATH came in, right, the World Provider of Transgender Health, and all of these models that still are, heavily used within the mainstream hospitals that are heavily outdated and don't just work off the idea that trans people can know who we are, right? Before any of this existed, trans folks were around. And so I think that this also is just an example of how manipulation, gaslighting, bullying are all in play with these orders that are meant to be obtruse, are meant to be hard to understand, are meant for the everyday citizen to say, well, I don't know, it looks really wild, I guess we can't do this. And so it's important for organizations like the ACLU, like Trans Law Center, like Lambda Legal, to be there to challenge these, right? Because that's how we are able to also say that while there are these executive orders, most is, Heron, as you said, most, if not, and most of them have been challenged, and most of them are not actually just going through without being touched. So I think right now for trans folks in general, I think we need to mobilize. Fear being fear and being paralytic is not going to serve us. I think what we can do is to be, strategists, to have a really clear analysis on who is impacted by this and why, is to fund trans organizing. I say that because in the past 2 years, right, as a small grassroots organization that up until the next month from now, thanks actually to a grant we're receiving from TLC that's allowing us for the first time ever in the history of our organization since 2016 to hire the second ever full-time staff member, right? So that's huge. But if it wasn't for that, and if it wasn't for work, and often that's how it works too, is that trans people fund trans people. And what we need to see is more cis folks, is more allies stepping up is more folks actually caring about these issues and connecting the dots, that this is about your families and about you as well. And it's meant for us to feel siloed. It's meant for us to feel scared. I say that as someone who is Mexican, who is second generation, who is a child of immigrants, whose family migrated here, my mother's side from Mexico. My dad is also white. He's from the Ozarks. So these conversations happening about Trump's America, and also, frankly, using working class poor white folks to really pull from their own cycles of systemic harm and violence, where folks like Trump don't care about you.
What?
They don't give a butt about you, right? What we know is that it's meant to be used. These systems, these folks who are on the margins are meant to be used to both look like they're attacking each other, look like they're the threat, when in fact the threat is right there in the Oval Office.
Thank you so much, Marique. You know, TLC has been recommending a couple of things right now to trans people specifically. And the first of that is to reach out to our trusted community organizations like Transformations, like the San Diego LGBTQ Community Center. And I'm so grateful that we have both of you on the call today, and also grateful to ACLU as well. Marique, I heard you say that everyone is being impacted by these executive actions, that everyone has a gender identity, everyone has a sexual orientation. And I know that you said that trans people are kind of like the object lesson right now. Can you talk a little bit more about how trans folks can, or rather how non-trans folks can support trans people right now, and maybe can support organizations like Transformations?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to take that in two parts. One, I'm going to say is that, so part of the work that we do at Transformations is we are literally on the ground in the region. So depending on the times of year, we're pulling in our amazing teams of leaders. We have a national community advisory board that consists of leaders from both our region, Missouri, Kansas, and Arkansas, as well as some national experts and leaders, all trans leaders of color. So depending on what's happening, we actually are pulling in these folks and doing all types of creative, responsive programming. So 2 years ago, we did a liberation tour where we traveled all across our region and hosted a series of town halls. So the town hall that we just did wasn't the first time of us doing this. I think some of the things that make us unique in our work is being really skilled facilitators, moderators, mediators, and having, years in the work, right? We're not necessarily green in this. And so when we were going around and doing that, we also were making sure to pay all of trans leadership. And I think in our region, there's still this model that exists that trans folks should be asked to do something, to join a panel, to help provide, free cultural competency or coaching or training, and not pay for that. And I think that the reality is we need to understand that trans folks' wisdom is well honed, that the resiliency we have often comes from going through lots of trauma, and that the least our allies can do is fund and fuel that. Transformation started as an organization that provided trans youth support groups. We did that for 4 years. We ran a few different types of trans youth groups, a general group for kids 12 to 18 years old who are trans, non-binary, or questioning their gender identity. And through that, an informal parent guardian group formed. And then we also had a trans girls group. And we saw that some of the parents helped support and fund the group, but even those parents who love their kids maybe didn't have the resources or means, or maybe their money was going into supporting their trans children in all types of ways. There wasn't necessarily community buy-in. There definitely wasn't a larger LGBT buy-in. And I want to name that because one of the tactics that the right is using right now is actually going to gay and lesbian leaders, right? We've seen this with some of the national organizations, right? I won't say them here because I don't want to get y'all in trouble, but if this was my own stuff, I would easily say it, right? One of our leaders was a statewide director from the orgs and was just fired. And that same organization fired most of their BIPOC organizers across the South, most of their trans organizers, because their buckling down for this administration. And part of what we see from LGBTQ orgs, right, that are often led by cis gay men or cis lesbian women, or maybe, you know, the exceptional non-binary person nowadays, is that we don't necessarily see a commitment to trans leadership, much less trans leadership of color. So that's one.
Wow.
The other is that our allies are needing to have conversations with each other about where they fall with their relationships with trans folks. And I say that because when I was, you know, when we were testifying about legislation, right, when we were down in Little Rock and talking about SB 270 2 years ago, which was criminal sexual indecency of a minor. So if trans women were in women's restrooms, that they could have prosecuted us as child predators and been on the sex offender registry, and potentially looked at our genitals to see if we were real women, because we were predators in women's restrooms. That did not pass the way it was written. But in that process, when I went down to testify, I was pretty shocked to see that hardly any trans women had even talked about this legislation. And so sometimes when these legislations are happening, there is a default to pull in the parents or the nice priest or the nice rabbi or the nice grandma, and actually not have trans folks talking about how this will impact us ourselves. And also, many of the people, specifically the men who are pushing out these bills and legislation, are absolutely obsessed with trans women in their personal lives. They're the ones who are hitting us up, whether it's through sex work, whether it's on the ads, whether it's on Grindr, right? And they want relationships with us. They have relationships with us. So there's hypocrisy there, because the only way that this is happening, right? Why is everybody so heavily pushing these anti-trans bills? If you talk with the dolls and the girls, they'll tell you and say, honey, somebody's wife caught something and is upset. Like somebody said, go get those, right? I can't say it here, right? But go get those slur words, right? Go get them, because they're upset that their husband or their son or their, you know, nephew actually likes trans women. And that is the reality. So I think that there's a deeper conversation there about the cults of toxic masculinity, about how white supremacy, about how men really F each other up, that needs to exist, because that is also what's fueling all of this on the national level.
Thank you so much, Marique. I think we need to have a conversation about trans misogyny, about anti-Blackness, about how United States history is built on misogyny, trans misogyny, and anti-Blackness, and how those all
I think that's a really good idea.
Intersect to impact trans women of color.
Can someone ask them? Can someone ask, like, can you name names about Republican lawmakers who are trying to get with trans people?
Because I know that the San Diego LGBT Community Center is doing some incredible work supporting trans migrants, trans women of color, and folks who are trying to access programs and services in their local communities. Aaron, could you tell us a little bit about what the community center is doing right now?
I've seen Aaron before.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Aaron. So yeah, let me go a little bit into some context about what the San Diego LGBT Community Center is, kind of where we got our start, and that'll kind of build into the work that we're doing today. But kind of how I mentioned earlier, the San Diego LGBT Community Center has been around for over 50 years. We are, again, the largest health and human services provider for LGBTQIA+ folks in all of San Diego County. And that really means that a lot of folks look to us both as a service providing organization, but also as an advocacy organization. And that's really what makes our organization so unique, is that we're able to take the work that we do with our clients and translate that to meaningful advocacy at different levels of government with community partners. And we are able to really respond to the needs of our community as it arises. And so one really unique thing about the center is that we are just so close to the US-Mexico border. We are the largest LGBTQ+ community center in close proximity to this border. And so in the 50 years that we've existed in San Diego, there has really been an intentional binational approach to our work. So I can kind of fast forward a little bit to 2018, outside of the 1970s, to when we really saw a lot of migrant caravans coming to the US-Mexico border. At the time, the center really dug their heels into the ground and said we need to work with local organizations, not just on the San Diego side of things, but in Tijuana. And so we worked with those organizations to support local and local binational folks seeking asylum. And we really met that moment by making intentional steps to work with both asylum seekers and folks who live in Tijuana, so that we're not really looking at this as just folks who are kind of passing through or folks who are moving through the border, but folks who are moving through the border every day, as part of this really interesting binational economy where we see so many, for example, of our students who come to school in San Diego County, and they cross the border every day. We really needed at the time to work with folks whose experience really is in both spaces. And so kind of from that, we really understand that a large number of LGBTQIA+ folks who migrate to San Diego are part of the trans community and identify as trans. And we've really made strong connections with folks who are organizing at the intersection of trans advocacy and support services, as well as immigration. So for example, one of these organizations is Proyecto Trans Latinas. And they are an organization that, they started out kind of as a mutual aid organization where they were like, hey, we can find you someplace to stay while you're getting your asylum cases heard. We can make sure that you have access to food and all of that kind of stuff first and foremost, and then also do the advocacy work, making sure that folks are visible and that they are getting their needs met, on both the food and housing and all of that kind of basic needs, as well as just getting their stories out in the world in front of elected officials and folks like that, right? And so at the time when the center had a fully staffed Latinx services, we would go out and do work at the Otay Mesa Detention Center that is just in our backyard. We would provide folks with access to legal aid, healthcare. We would do things like connect folks to HIV medication, right? Something that a lot of times folks in detention are denied, right? We see that so often. And so in this critical moment now, the center is prioritizing that we have staff at the ready to provide services for our community that they're asking for. We're not just, doing an assessment of, oh, this is what we think we need, this is what we think they need. No, we are responding to the needs that they are asking for day in and day out. And so that is stuff like know your rights education, being able to access legal aid resources. And really, we are just building out our relationships throughout our binational region, such as really working with our local Mexican consulate, right? And so being able to just understand how binational our folks are really has been key to ensuring that their needs are met. And so as far as the provision of our services, all of our services are available regardless of your immigration status. And as an organization, we have made sure that we have policies in place to respond to any ICE presence at our sites. So we've done some trainings with our folks just to make sure that, our staff feel safe, our staff feel protected, and our clients do as well. And so transitioning to honestly a WIN event that we're putting on tomorrow. We are putting together a Know Your Rights workshop for LGBTQIA+ migrants and immigrants, regardless of status. We are making it just a very open space, as well as for allies to attend as well. So we are just really being intentional about responding to the impacts of immigration policy and enforcement on LGBTQ+ folks. We are taking a regional approach to this work. So the San Diego LGBT Community Center really is, a lot of our social services are concentrated within the city of San Diego, but the county of San Diego is huge. And so we are really making sure that this is the first of a series of events. We're going to go up into North County and work with folks there. We're going to go into our East County where we've had, which is to a lot of folks' surprise, has a high concentration of transphobic legislators locally and just organizationally. And we are going to go into our South Bay. So we're really trying to expand and make sure that our entire county is being served by these services, and that we're ensuring that we are responsive to the direct needs of the community and understand that this educational component that we're developing, it's very volatile. The information that we're providing to folks is going to change in real time. What we say today may be very different from what we say tomorrow, depending on a court ruling, depending on any executive actions, depending on the enforcement that we are just seeing in the stories that we're hearing from our clients. And so we're very aware of all of this, and we're making sure that our community is able to trust us as a trusted messenger and is able to see us as a resource that, okay, if I'm scared, if I'm someone who is afraid to leave my house, where I'm rationing my HIV medications and taking them only 2 to 3 times a week because I'm afraid that I'm going to get cut off from my access to medications. Those are the things that we're hearing from our clients, and we need to empower them and make sure that they know that, one, they need to be taking their medications, and 2, that they have rights, and that, if a law enforcement comes up to them, that they hand them this red card that tells them that you have your rights. These are your constitutional rights. I'm not going to talk to you. I need a lawyer. Done. And we really need to also bring in those allies as well. And really, we see that education is empowerment, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're LGBTQIA plus identifying, whether you're both, or you're just an ally. And so we really need to make sure that our community as a whole is able to come together and support the most vulnerable of us in a time of fear, of misinformation, and just when a lot of work needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Erin. I heard you talk so much about informing the community through Know Your Rights, through your event tomorrow, through making sure that people understand their rights under the law in multiple jurisdictions across national lines, which is really tricky. And one of the reasons why we recommend that trans folks and non-binary folks reach out directly to their community centers right now. Community centers are going to have the most updated information about how laws impact your particular jurisdiction, whether that's your state, your county, or your city. Erin, how do you recommend folks reach out and be in contact with their community centers? Is it easy to drop into a community center? Can folks, I recommend folks, for example, go onto Centerlink, which will have information about your local center. But I'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, of course. So really getting connected to community centers, we try to be as accessible as possible. We try to, provide our services in the languages, that our community needs. So many of our folks sitting at the front desk, we provide drop-in services. And so folks don't need an appointment. Folks can be in a crisis and they can come to our doors. Our crisis navigation team is extremely competent. And that they are just so on it that by the time that folks have processed kind of what's happening to them, a lot of times they're already connected to the services. They have an appointment for housing. They have an appointment, whether it's they're reporting a hate crime or something like that. Like those are things that we are very, very good and responsive to. So drop-ins are amazing. I would also say that as far as really getting connected with community centers outside of our provision of services, we really just need folks out there and using their voices to advocate for the needs of our community on the level of to our local governments. Right now, we are very aware that a lot of LGBTQIA plus serving organizations, their funding is under threat, right? We have seen just a lot of austerity cuts already preemptively by organizations, large-scale cuts, upwards of like 25% of some organization staff, programs getting cut outright. And so I would really say that being able to understand like how the public comment process works at your local city council, at your county board of supervisors, understanding how to submit e-comments. We were talking about that as far as commenting, on federal actions and policies and doing that through the ACLU. These are really crucial things because guess what? If you end up getting 30 or 40 folks to call about an issue for, the provision of gender affirming care in your state to your congressional delegation, then chances are they'll actually listen to you. One of the reasons why we see so many congressional delegates, doing things where it's like, wait, that's not representative of your community, is it? It's because the opposition really understands how to organize. They understand how to make sure that folks show up, make sure that their voice is heard, to make it seem like they are a bigger proportion of the constituency than than they may actually be. And so we really need folks to be showing up and telling their local city council members, telling the supervisors sitting on the county board of supervisors that you need to be funding LGBTQIA+ affirming housing services, mental health services. You need to make sure that we have access to food, that we actually have safe spaces to congregate even, right? And so I would say that the community centers are a great space, but in order to ensure that these spaces continue to exist in a meaningful way, and that they're able to provide services that actually respond to the community's needs as we hear them, we need to be able to work with our local elected officials to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Erin. That actually answers the question I was going to bring to us to close, which is, what can trans and non-binary people do right now to regain a sense of control and autonomy over our own lives
That's
right
not
now?
Cool, man.
We talked about getting informed. We talked about doing some advocacy, whether that's at your local, state, or national level. Elizabeth, can you tell us a little bit about the comment period and how folks can submit comments through the ACLU? I can drop the link in the YouTube chat as well, so folks will have that while you talk.
Yeah, I think with respect to the comments, it should be, there should be directions on the form. There's also, we also do have materials up that are Q&As about the lawsuits that we have and what impact those have. And if folks are experiencing passport problems, we have a form for that as well. Just, again, trying to keep track of who's out there. And then I would just second everything that, Erin just said about acting locally. I'm also based in San Francisco, and supporting our politicians who are working to support our community is important. It's important that they hear from us. It is the national environment feels very scary. It feels like prominent support of trans folks and issues related to trans folks is a bigger lift today than it was previously, and that's even true in a state like California. So I think for if we can support our leaders who are supporting us, that's very important that they hear from us.
Thank you so much. Marique, I'm going to give you the last word before we say goodbye and ask you, what is one thing that trans and non-binary people can do right now to regain control?
I mean, we already have control, right? We're living in our bodies and our truth. Come on, like that's control, right? So I think instead, like, can I reframe that? I think what trans folks can do is like, how do we lean into our resiliency? I mean, this came up at the town hall, right? Is that it is meant for us to feel scared and feel alone and feel crazy, right? Like, I actually think what's more important is that there's something that we're all doing, even as maybe like scared or sad as we do feel, that actually is working for us. It's actually how we got to where we are. And so I think leaning on our own sets of strengths, the own ways that make us uniquely creative and beautiful and strong is important. But I also think with that, it's important to lean on each other, right? To not, because like isolation is meant to be a tactic in all of this. It's meant to keep us alone and feel like we don't have community, feel like people hate us. And so still like finding those folks, creating those circles, right? Taking those moments of chance to say, maybe right now I don't feel like I can, I don't feel comfortable necessarily going to like a straight or a cis environment primarily, but maybe I'm gonna like go to like this larger LGBT thing, or maybe I'm actually really disconnected from the LGBTQ community. So I'm going to go connect with like other migrant or immigration organizers, or, like I think that there's ways we can connect with other folks who are like-minded that will support us. So I think within that, just not to stay in ourselves, to connect with community and to remember that there's things we're already doing that are strong.
That's absolutely right. We do have control. We are gorgeous. We are everywhere. We are everything. Trans and non-binary people are just the alpha and omega. So I thank you so much for that reframe, Marique. And I will thank Elizabeth and Aaron for joining us today. Thank you so much for representing truly the best of kind of queer community right now, educating one another, making sure that we have opportunities to talk back to our public officials who are there to represent us and to represent our concerns. So thank you so much for sharing here and for your work. A couple of things to uplift from the call. If you'd like to join the community conversation tomorrow, the Know Your Rights that the LGBT Community Center of San Diego is having. Is there an easy way folks can join that?
Yes, I would like to join. Yes, I would.
So this first session is actually going to be held in person. I know that a lot of folks typically have been doing these virtually, especially just for the safety of our community. But our community specifically wanted this first session in person, and they just wanted to feel a sense of togetherness and security with each other. So we're not going to be providing a virtual link to this first session, but as we kind of build things out, we are going to be continuing to hopefully expand the accessibility to these sessions.
It's a presentation
for any updates on the work that the San Diego LGBT Community Center is doing. You can follow us on Instagram at LGBT Center, and we got lucky with that handle. It's at LGBT Center. And then you can also go to our website, thecentersd.org. Again, that's thecentersd.org. And we send pretty frequent updates, and you'll see new events coming from us very soon.
Thank you so much. Quickly, Elizabeth, is there a way folks should follow the ACLU?
I mean, we're all, on social media and on, have a website that we try to keep updated. So please engage. We push out lots of ways for folks to engage.
Thank you so much. And I just dropped the comment portal in the YouTube comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please join over there. Marique, how can folks get involved with Transformations?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to plug two of our sites. So the main organizational website is Transformations with an S, KC is in Kansas City.org.org. So transformationskc.org. Our other website that's really great is to talk more about that specific camp we do in the Ozarks, liberationcamp.org. And we do have an active fundraising campaign we just launched today. We are looking to raise $20,000 as a way to sustain our programming and work. As we know, funding is being divested. So folks are interested in learning more about that. They can go to our Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook at KC Transformations.
Thank you so much to the three of you. If you're watching, please follow us on YouTube and Facebook as we continue these important conversations this month. In March, we'll also be having a conversation from our disability justice program and a conversation around Trans Day of Visibility. Also, please sign up for our newsletter so you can find out when our next conversations are. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.
Okay, we're going to look at this camp thing. Thank you, Heron. We appreciate you, Heron. Now, listen, I want to make something very, very clear. I disavow what Jason was doing in their chat because Jason was disrupting them, and I know people saw this. And I'm not just doing this to be a dick. I want to explain explicitly why I disavow that and why I never want that to happen when we have control over it. Because what Jason did was disrupt their chat in a way that started creating interpersonal drama in the chat, which means that the people doing the live presentation are going to be significantly less likely to actually respond to us. And the goal of doing this, hang on. The part of the goal, really the whole goal of doing this is to get them on video saying things that we can use against them. It's not to get some personal fucking ego trip by starting an argument with an anonymous person in the chat. So Jason kind of fucked our plan today by being such a dick, which is why I banned him from the community, because he wouldn't stop doing this shit when I repeatedly told him not to do it. Because it's disruptive. It doesn't help us achieve the goal. In fact, it makes it less likely that we're going to achieve the goal. So you might get that little momentary blip of getting that dopamine hit. Oh, I own the libs, bro. High five. And then you walk away with nothing because they were defensive the entire time and they weren't going to say the quiet part out loud. And it blows back on us and we look like the bad guys. Because we're obviously just there to cause problems. This is why I always tell you guys, you've got to answer questions just nicely that are relevant to the content. We know enough about what they believe that we can ask questions to challenge them in a smart way. We don't have to do this bullshit kind of like low rent dunking on the lips. We can challenge their ideas in a smart way where they don't really know. If they don't know who we are, which Heron knows who I am, but maybe they forgot, who knows? If they don't know who we are, we can ask them questions to get them to say the quiet part out loud in a way that looks completely even keeled. You don't have to be an asshole about it. You really don't. Being an asshole about it just makes you the asshole. It doesn't actually do anything to hurt them. It actually hurts us more than it hurts them, because for other people watching, guess what? We've just proven their point. We've just shown that we are the people that they say we are. But if we ask smart questions and we ask it in a nice way and we don't harass, we don't disrupt, we don't spam, we don't do any of those things, then we might actually get them to answer our question. And that is when they say the quiet part out loud. And then we have a clip that we can use against them for all fucking time. That is so much more valuable than the momentary dopamine hit that you get from dunking on the libs. So Jason, I know you find this content because of me, bro. I know exactly where you're getting it. And I need you, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I've already banned you from my chat. But do you understand that you are only causing problems? Do you understand that that tactic does not work? That's why you got banned from the community in the first place, because you wouldn't stop doing this shit, and it disrupted what we were actually trying to do. So, maybe you put on your big boy pants, you think about the bigger picture, and you do it a little bit differently next time. And maybe, had you always taken that tactic, you wouldn't have gotten banned from my community in the first place. Because I know you like my content. You follow me around the fucking internet. I know that the only reason you were in that stream is because we were streaming it. So I know you're fucking watching. You could have been more respectful. You could have been more tactical. You could have been more strategic. You refused, and that's why you're banned. But maybe if you got your shit together and you stopped doing shit like that so we could actually get something useful out of the conversation, then maybe I would let you back if you proved that you had fucking learned and turned into an adult. Sorry to rant, but that shit really pisses me off, and that's not the first time I've seen Jason do this, is the thing. Like, I've seen Jason do this repeatedly now, and anytime he shows up in the fucking chat, I know this shit is going to get completely disrupted, and then, oh, we just waste our fucking time, but hey, man, he got his dopamine hit from dunking on the lips. It makes no fucking sense. Conservatives always shoot themselves in the foot. Always. Because their highest priority is dunking on the libs. And that's it. Anyway, I want to show you guys something. So this, it's those of you in the chat who don't know who Heron Greensmith is, I think, honestly, the biggest revelation of today, we knew Reagan saw Heron in the chat last week. That's part of why we were watching this, because Reagan was like, Carlin, Heron Greensmith showed up, because Reagan has been around long enough to remember who Heron is. Okay? Not all of you have. And I was like, holy shit, we lost track of Heron Greensmith. Heron is someone that I met when I was undercover at my first, I have her picture. I was undercover at my first ever undercover event. It was called the Collective Power Conference at Hampshire College. And Heron was a presenter in one of the presentations I was in. And literally, I'm in the presentation that Heron's giving, which is about opposition research, which was actually like a pretty decent presentation, if I'm honest. I actually did learn some stuff from it. But I had this moment in the middle of the presentation where I looked up Heron's Twitter account and found out that she had blocked me on Twitter. And I almost burst out laughing in the middle of the presentation because I'm like, oh shit, I'm sitting in on this person's session and they literally have me blocked on Twitter. And I was like sitting dead center of the room looking right at them too. So I was like, oh, but I was wearing a mask and I'm sure they didn't really know that much about me to begin with, but I had never heard of them before that. Anyway, so we remember Heron Greensmith, and you can see today Heron Greensmith is fucking crazy. And the biggest revelation of this whole thing for me is we now know where Heron Greensmith is. Is this Christmas? Is this my birthday? This is a different job than the last job that this person had. The last job this person had was opposition research. This person, make no mistake, this person is smart. This person, and Heron can't even say shit because at the conference that I went to, Heron talked about how they them secretly recorded Republicans at Republican events. So Heron does exactly the same thing I do, but she used to do it for the other side, and she used to they them. Sorry, don't want to misgender. They them used to secretly record people. I heard them say it in person. So you guys saw how Heron Greensmith looked today. Let me show you how Heron Greensmith looked 2 years ago. Not there. There. That's what Heron Greensmith looked like when I met them at the Collective Power Conference. That's why I was so fucking shocked when I never would have even recognized but for such a distinctive name. I was like, that's why, for people who don't know, that's why I was so like, holy shit, are you kidding me? Look, Heron was tweeting about me too. Look, hi Heron. It looks like an anti-abortion. I'm actually not anti-abortion, ironically. Anti-abortion activists came to the Collective Power Conference at Hampshire College this weekend, claiming to see what we say when we're not listening. And we just did it again, Heron. We're back. We're back. Heron, I always told you. Heron, look at the title of this article. An open letter to my new socialist best friend. Heron, I knew when I met you 2 years ago, we were going to be best friends. I knew it. I predicted this. Literally, everything I say comes true all the time. I'm the ultimate manifester. We are absolutely going to be best friends, Heron. Yep, reunions are nice. It's true. It's always good to find people you forgot about. The good news is we say the same things whether or not they're listening. I was there this weekend. This person attended my workshop on opposition monitoring, I think. Yes, I did. If she did, and writes a thread, it'll be interesting to see how she characterizes my message that the opposition monitoring is morally neutral and can be used to increase bodily autonomy and curtail it. Heron probably wasn't actually expecting me to say. I actually learned a lot from Heron's presentation. And Heron and I both hate Matt Walsh. Can you imagine? Heron was like, who do you hate? And I raised my hand. I was like, Matt Walsh. And it's true. I do hate Matt Walsh. I hate Matt Walsh. Heron hates Matt Walsh. We have so much in common already. This is why we're best friends. kind of hilarious if she did attend my workshop. The opposition monitoring is a very 101 level workshop on how to monitor opposition. Yeah, it was, but it was still good. I'll confess now to get ahead of any scandal. While I don't condone doxing, I did make a joke about pooping on someone's doorstep. Yep, she did. I also called anti-trans activists fuckwads from the main stage. Yep. Never a dull moment around us trans socialist abortionists. I missed her. This was fate. Reagan, this was fate that you brought this to us. It brought Heron back into our consciousness. We had all collectively forgotten about this gift that we were given. It happens sometimes. We follow a lot of socialists. I'm not so much worried about what she's going to say about me. I'm old and have institutional support. I'm worried about the young people whom she might have talked to and photographed. This is a college students' conference, small and radical and intimate and powerful. And so I wrote Heron an open letter, and you can read it if you want. And I corrected some of the things that she said. And I said that she could DM me on Twitter because I never blocked her. But yeah, that's what Heron Greensmith looked like the last time I saw them. And that's what they look like today. Oh, Heron. Oh. And I was looking through Heron's Twitter account, and it looks like Heron's gone over to Blue Sky, so we will have to add. I'll make sure I add Heron to our Blue Sky monitoring dashboard in Discord for people who are on the Red Menace Collective Substack. So we'll get Heron in there. We'll make sure we're monitoring her posts over on Blue Sky. You're welcome, Heron. See, this is what I learned from Heron in the opposition research workshop. She's probably was thinking about how conservatives like to lie about what Marxists think and hope to accomplish. Yeah, I bet they, them was. They, them, guys. We don't misgender on this channel. We respect the pronouns. They, them. Okay? But Heron recently said, right after Trump got elected, check this out. We are going to lose comrades to respectability politics. Don't be one. We are going to lose comrades to preemptive compliance. Don't do it. We're going to lose comrades to fear. Don't let it be you. We're going to lose comrades to purity challenges. Don't fall for them. So Heron is a good comrade, just like I always said Heron was. I always said Heron's not a progressive. Heron is a they, them comrade from the very beginning. And now, look, I was right. So what a gift we've been given. How amazing. I just like this couldn't have gone any better. We did get some good clips too. Check out this liberation camp thing. This is what I wanted to show you guys. We're going to have to look into this a little bit. Check this out. It's for trans people of color over 18. Okay, so that's good. Adults. Okay, that's good. Transformations is a trans woman of color led nonprofit organization focused on capacity building, leadership development among trans communities of color, blah, 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 blah. This exciting week-long event, a week-long camp, is organized exclusively for trans BIPOC leaders, offering a unique opportunity to participate in leadership and skill-building workshops, intergenerational conversations, mentorship models. You know, okay, so is this cringe? Yeah, this is fucking cringe. Okay, it is. But to be real for a second, does the right do anything like this? I mean, the right has CPAC, in which they all do as much blow as possible and fuck gay hookers or whatever they do at CPAC. But just to be like, I mean, this is like a place to train activists. This is a place to develop messaging. And yeah, they're probably having lots of like weird fucking kinky sex that we don't even want to think about, but that's what queer activists do. But like when they're not fucking, they're probably actually doing real training around messaging and activism and planning and strategy and things like that. And you know what? Is that like the worst thing from just a strategic perspective to get young, excited people together and teach them how to be good activists? Maybe the right actually should do something like that. Maybe that would actually create, I don't know, a pipeline of activists. If you want activists on your side, because the right has one activist and his name is Scott Pressler, and that's it. If you want more Scott Presslers in the world, you actually do have to make a concerted effort to create those Scott Presslers. They don't just poof out of nowhere. Scott Pressler was like, and there's a reason there's only one activist on the right, is because Scott Pressler is an anomaly. Why isn't the right doing this? And you know what? Maybe conservatives do hold a camp and they all go fuck in the off hours. It's what they do at CPAC anyway. It's what they do at all. I've been to conservative events. You know what happens at conservative events? No one actually goes to the main parts of the event. They all just go to the networking and happy hour events, and then they go out to the bar, and then they go back to the hotel room, and there's usually a white powdery substance somewhere. So it's not like conservatives aren't fucking. So why don't they do something where they can all get together and maybe do some activism training at the same time? That's all I'm saying. They're going to do it anyway. Liberation Camp catalyzes powerful networking and skill building for the trans BIPOC community. We prioritize the attendance of trans leaders working with trans youth and trans women of color. In many of these communities have few opportunities to connect and learn about themselves in safe, affirming spaces. They've got some awards there. What's Transcend? Oh, they don't have a link. Whole summer camp for trans adults. Oh, they have merit badges. Look at this. You can earn merit badges. Is this like the Scouts? They have a talent show. Oh, look, trauma-infused storytelling. Oh, holy shit. That's like a Girl Scout merit badge sash. Wow. Do you have a YouTube channel? Liberation Camp. Oh no, apparently not. Oh well. Anyway, so that's some good stuff there. All right, well, we did get a couple clips, like whatever. It wasn't the most eventful infiltration, but we did get some good clips. So that is all we are going to have for today, guys. I'm going to go do some work on this Mary Nardini gang book. I'm writing chapter 2 right now. If you haven't read it, I am writing a kind of like a narrative history of militant queer activism and how it actually transformed from something that used to be very different into what it is today. What are the influences of queer activism? Things like that, because we're about to see a massive uptick in queer activism, and so it really would benefit people if they want to actually understand what's happening to know the history. I am writing the history of one very specific group and all the events that kind of led up to its creation and the moment that it was in as a way to demonstrate that to people. I'm also working on a larger project about queer Marxism in general, but if you want to read chapters as I'm writing them, head over to Red Menace Collective. That is redmenacecollective.substack.com, and sign up over there, and you'll actually be able to read draft chapters of the book literally as I'm writing them before it becomes a book. So I'm working on that right now. I'm still fighting with Amazon to get the paperback pre-order on the Debunking the Communist Manifesto book, because Amazon keeps freaking out and it says, you're publishing content that's already been published. And I said, I know, the Communist Manifesto is in the book and it's public domain. I'm allowed to do that. And then Amazon freaks out about it, and then they say I need to change something, and then I go and change it, and then I go back and they're like, you're trying to publish previously published content. I'm like, I know, we already had this conversation, Amazon, but I'm working on resolving the issue. It should be out next week. The paperback version pre-order should be up soon, Amazon. But it will be out next week. And you can pre-order the Kindle version. And members of the Red Menace Collective will be getting a PDF copy of the book so they can get started reading either tonight or tomorrow. So Red Menace Collective members win again. You got my racism book. You guys can also pick up my racism book. This is currently available in paperback or Kindle. It is called A Brief History of Racism. It is a short, tiny, tiny, tiny little read about the creation and the evolution of the term racism. And if you read the book and you like the book, go ahead and leave it a review on Amazon. The reviews really do help me out. And 5 stars only. If you have anything less than 5 stars, keep it to yourself. But I had a lot of fun writing this book. I learned a lot, and I think you guys will appreciate it. And guess what? I wrote a whole book about whiteness meaning capitalism without actually saying the term whiteness means capitalism. So I feel like I deserve a little credit for that. I'm just saying. I turn out amazing content, and I never get credit. No one else is churning out content like I am. I'm going to write more anti-communist books this year than anyone else. And it's not even going to be close. And you guys are going to love it. And it's all going to be amazing content. And it's going to be fun and entertaining and interesting and dystopian and all the good things, because no one else wants to do this, so I'll do it. Fine. I'll do it. Anyway, that's all I've got. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Could you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.